among males. So one of the concerns is snoring abnormal? So when you hear snoring, it means that you have a vibration in your upper airway and there's narrowing. And this can be caused by medications, can be caused by obesity, and you have a lot of factors that can contribute to this. So primary snoring itself may not be harmful to an individual, but it increases your risks for hypertension. However, when this obstructs the airway significantly, that it diminishes the oxygen that goes in and prevents the carbon dioxide from going out, then it increases the risks also for heart attacks, strokes. So someone who snores and has these other problems, you do have to seek consult with your physician.
Now we often hear the phrase as well that I need to catch up on my sleep. Because you can't actually regain or catch up on lost sleep by sleeping more another time or the following day as well. Dr. Patrick, tell us more about this. Normally, if someone pulls out an all-nighter, sometimes a whole weekend of not sleeping at all, and they say that, I'll just catch up in the next 3 days, I'm going to sleep 3 days straight. Does this practice catch up or negate that period of lost sleep?
When we talk about a lack of sleep, we talk about sleep debt. So utang yan, no? So it means you owe sleep to yourself. So the thing is, it doesn't mean that if I did not sleep for 7 hours, I owe 7 hours. It can get compounded. So what is important is you really try to get as much sleep as possible. And if you foresee that you might be sleep deprived, you might do what we call already planned naps ahead of time. But just in case you lack the sleep, they say, as much as possible, still wake up at the same time every day, but you can sleep a little earlier to sort of catch up. But at the end of the day, prevention is still better than cure. So make sure you try to get as adequate a sleep as possible.
Now, Dr. Patrick, it was advised that the average person needs 7 to even 9 hours of sleep per day. It's a good quality sleep at that. How can you explain some people who just sleep for 5 hours a day pretty much their whole life and that's how they function? Are they at risk of any sleep deprivation, lack of sleep, even if that's how they regularly function?
We have people who are short sleepers, but as much as possible, we want to keep the sleep schedule between 5 to 9 hours. Less than 5 or more than 9 hours have been shown by studies to shorten lifespan. So do try to make sure that you get at least some sleep between 5 to 9 hours. And there are people who are, they call owls, who work better at night, and there are people who are larks, who really work better in the morning. So although we follow general schedules within, as was mentioned earlier, in terms of the circadian rhythm, we do have to contend with work. And some of us do have to work in off hours that where others are asleep, we have to be awake. So as much as possible, just make sure you try to get those 5 to 7. 7 hours would be good, or 8 hours would be good for most, but at least within 5 to 9 hours.
But ultimately, though, the more sleep deprived you are, the more we can become irritable, stressed, anxious, our mood changes if we lack quality sleep. Dr. Marga, please explain real quick how the lack of sleep can affect our mood and our mental health overall.
So basically, if we lack sleep, we are kind of moody, we tend to be irritable, we cannot focus on the things, so that will add to your stress and anxiety that you're not able to actually accomplish everything you need to, and you're worried about the mistakes you make, so it will add up to your stress, and generally, it will affect how you work and your behavior throughout the day. So that is why it's important to have really sleep, so because in general, it will affect your functioning, and your functioning will also affect your mental health.
Just as our sleep problems can lead to changes in mental health, our mental health can also impact our sleep. When we return, we'll discuss the science behind our dreams and our nightmares. We're your partner in healthcare. This is Medtalk. Health Talk.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay. SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Ito ang RPN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to Medtalk Health Talk. Earlier on the show, we talked about some sleep myths that may be harming our health. Many of these poor sleep habits are a product of misinformation. But sometimes the ordinary stresses of daily life can also lead to disrupted sleep. They may even trigger what are so-called nightmares. Now, Dr. Patrick, to better understand these nightmares, let's first talk about how we dream. Can you explain that portion or the REM cycle for us?
To explain the REM cycle, just understand that sleep can be divided into two parts, the non-REM or the REM. The REM is a part where we lose all muscle tone, but there's a lot of activity in the brain. So when we have dreams, dreams may become most vivid during REM sleep or R sleep. So if you have dreams that you remember are quite bizarre, they most likely occur during REM sleep. So dreams are basically any thoughts, dreams, emotions that you actually feel during sleep. And they, as we said, it can occur in any stage of sleep, but they're most vivid in the REM sleep.
How about nightmares? Nightmares can happen to adults, that can frequently happen. Is this normal to happen in children and older children as well?
In terms of nightmares is the most common type of your REM-related parasomnia. So when you say parasomnia, and this is undesirable phenomena that occurs predominantly during sleep. It occurs in 5% approximately of the population, more in children than in adults. So it onset is usually before 10 years old, but those with later onset is actually suggest psychological causes such as anxiety, distress, and trauma. Now, nightmare content is actually reflective of the developmental milestone end stage. So for adolescents, there's more about social, academic, occupational, and safety-related concerns.
Now let's talk about a little bit about how sleep actually works. Dr. Patrick, could you tell us or explain to us the process of us going into sleep and what determines us waking up?
Don't think of sleep as simply restorative. There's a lot of things, as mentioned earlier, like hormone production, and in terms of control of hormones for for your hunger and satiety. These occur during nighttime. Now, as we transfer from one stage of sleep to the other, there may be things that happen. Feeling paralyzed, not being able to move, and sometimes imagining something like a character jump over you. It's called sleep paralysis. And this happens as we jump from one stage of sleep to another. So let's say we jump from N to REM, because in REM we have sort of muscle paralysis. We will experience that we can, and if unless we move one finger, that's the only time we can move our body. So the folklore that someone is out there to try and kill you at night is actually explainable by biological reasons.
Now, Dr. Patrick, what about sleepwalking naman? What's the explanation for this? How does this happen? Is this something that parents of children who sleepwalk should be concerned about, or even adults for that matter?
All right. I think this is more the domain of Dr. Marga, because most of the sleepwalkers occur during adolescence. Now, if it occurs during later in adulthood, you might have to investigate for other matters. But, however, if it's present from childhood and there's a genetic predisposition, it may be exacerbated. I remember I had a medical clerk, a student, who, when she went on duty on the hospital, started sleepwalking again. What's the cause of that? Sleep deprivation, stress, these things can precipitate it again. So this happens paradoxically during the deepest stage of sleep, or N3. That's why it's called parasomnia. You have a lot. They have sleepwalking, sleep talking, some have head banging. So there are so many things. So some people even cook at night and eat without knowing that they're doing that. So you do have a lot of disorders that are similar to sleepwalking as well.
Now, Dr. Marga, I'd like to talk about adolescents and sleep deprivation and how this may affect their overall mood, their overall sense of well-being, maybe even certain conditions like depression. Is there any link with depression and lack of sleep with adolescents?
When you look deeply into the DSM-5 criteria for depression, one of the symptoms there is actually sleep deprivation. So this has to be present for more than half a week or for at least 2 weeks for it to become significant. It has to be the other symptoms of depression such as sadness, anhedonia, also overeating, and the other symptoms. So having lack of sleep actually it affects your mental health. It makes you too tired to actually do anything. And when you have depression, you actually don't have any energy to move at all. So your tendency is to sleep so that you're good, that your mood will return. So basically, it could be a manifestation also of a mental problem such as depression if it's occurring too much or you're using it as an escape for your normal task. So when your sleep affects your normal tasks such as your activities with your friends, family, and school, it is already something that you should seek a doctor about.
So are these some of the overt symptoms, Dr. Marga, some of the physical effects of the lack of sleep?
Lack of sleep may make you have difficulty in concentrating. You can make more mistakes, adding to your stress in your schoolwork if you're not able to accomplish everything you need to do. So it could actually affect your schoolwork and hence add to your stress. The most common stress of our teenagers nowadays is the ACADS. They're having difficulty actually balancing both academics and their workload. When they're at home, they have to do their schoolwork at the same time with the other stuff. So basically, it's because they're having a kind of balance, having difficulty to balance. That's why they're more stressed. And if they're sleepy and tired, they cannot concentrate and they're not able to do. So it actually adds to their mental stress and the mental health difficulties they're experiencing right now.
What are the proven ways to sleep better at night? More on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on Medtalk Health Talk.
SMC San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay. SMC San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement. Gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement. Ato ni Bay.
Ito ang RPN, Radio Philippines Network. DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.
I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome back to Medtalk Health Talk. From the stress of the pandemic, work, and everyday challenges, sleep can be elusive. While we may not be able to control some of these stresses that affect a good night's rest, we can adopt better habits to encourage it. Dr. Patrick, let's talk about power naps. How effective are they? How long should we nap so that we don't feel drowsy throughout the day?
You can have either planned naps when you know you're going to be sleep deprived, or you can do emergency naps when you're really sleepy. So remember, we've been talking about sleep. Sleep deprivation, or when you're somnolent, is also a public health hazard. You can create an accident. So do make sure that if you're sleepy, the solution is not to take a lot of coffee, but to take a nap. The nap should normally not be less than 20 minutes, or else it's not restorative, and not more than 30 minutes, or it may disrupt the sleep at night.
Now, let's talk about some small lifestyle changes which can also help you better get good sleep at night. Dr. Marga, what are some good tips in order to get a good night's sleep? Does diet a big role in the quality of sleep that a person gets?
Diet is also important. So basically what we advise is to avoid taking caffeine or food with caffeine such as soda, tea after dinner. So you should avoid these things. And at the same time, before you go to bed, avoid eating large meals because you will be uncomfortable sleeping if your tummy is digesting a lot of food. And aside from those food and beverage, it's also advisable to avoid nicotine and alcohol in the evening because this may interrupt your sleep.
Now, Dr. Patrick, let's talk about some of the sleeping aids available. So there are sleeping aid supplements such as melatonin, which is very popular nowadays, and it can range all the way up to actual sleeping pills. Could you explain to our viewers the difference between these and how can these help with someone who is having trouble sleeping?
All right, so I'm sure you're familiar, as you mentioned, with melatonin. Melatonin is readily available over the counter. It's not considered as a drug per se. That's why you can buy it. As much as possible, don't exceed 10 milligrams. Now, remember, this is not advocating self-prescription, but it may help. So it's a natural hormone that we find in our brain that promotes sleep. Now, if this doesn't work, sometimes your doctors will provide you antihistamines. These are anti-allergies, and they provide you ones with sedating effects, the ones that can help you sleep. If these don't work, then they can move up to sedatives, either benzodiazepines. I'm sure you've heard of maybe diazepam, something like that, or non-benzodiazepines. So your doctor will try to find out what is best for you. You did mention something about alternatives. We do look at things like people who take valerian root, St. John's wort. Just be careful in checking whether they interact with any of your other existing medications.
So, Dr. Marga, what are some of the risks of self-medicating, especially when it comes to sleeping aids? For someone who is having trouble sleeping, they see someone who is taking this and they take that medication hoping that it would have the same effect for them. What could you advise, especially for the young adolescents?
We really don't advise self-medication. That is one thing that we should put into our minds always. So for those who self-medicate, always read first what are the side effects, because each medication, it has good effects, it also has side effects. So also always read about the side effects and always ask your doctor if this pill or the sleeping pill will be good for you, because you not it might be different effects for different people. It might not work as effectively for you. So always important to have someone in the medical field give you some advice before you actually take the sleeping medication.
Dr. Patrick, what can you say about our viewers who may use alcohol as their sleeping aid?
So very small amounts of alcohol may actually promote sleep. So, for people, the Europeans take a small amount of wine, that may help. But anything beyond that fragments your sleep pattern. So instead of really promoting good sleep, it actually promotes sleep disturbance. So do avoid taking alcohol, maybe aside from your usual nightcap of just one glass of wine, and if you do want to promote sleep. But beyond that, I think you might be seeing another specialist later on.
And with that, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Patrick Moral and Dr. Margaret May Maanyo, for being with us today. We appreciate your time and your expert insights. We hope by dispelling these sleep myths and giving these simple but effective tips on good sleep habits, we help promote good quality sleep, and as a result, your overall well-being has been improved as well. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and we'll see you again next time here on Medtalk.
SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay. SMC, San Miguel Corporation. Bisag unsang industriya ang sudlan niini, tinguha sa SMC ang pag-uswag o paglambo sa mga Pilipino. Karon, gikan sa SMC, aniya na ang SMC Davao Cement. SMC Davao Cement, gama sa Davao para sa Mindanao. SMC Davao Cement, ato ni bay.
Ito ang RBN, Radio Philippines Network, DXKT 1071 sa inyong mga radyo, ang Radyo Ronda sa Davao.